So Doge is getting a ton of attention, and it really should with the insane stuff they're uncovering.
$8 million to promote LGBTQI+ in the African nation of Lesotho, which nobody has ever heard of.
But if you think that's bad, wait until you hear about the Medicaid fraud going on in California, where Gavin Newsom is far too busy working on his inner Patrick Bateman starts a podcast vibe.
We need to change the conversation.
And I'm not even talking about a few people faking a limp to get an extra prescription for Advil. I'm talking about California basically treating federal Medicaid funds like Hunter Biden, who just found 10 grand under his couch, spending it like there's no tomorrow and pretending everything's fine. California has found a way to siphon off millions in Medicaid dollars, money meant for healthcare, the sick, the elderly, and struggling families, so they can cover for their other mistakes like budget deficits and pension liabilities. It's the equivalent of taking out a student loan to pay for college and then using all of it to buy a jet ski. But to be fair, a jet ski might be a better investment than a college degree. But in all seriousness, this is yet another financial disaster waiting to happen that people are just ignoring. So here's how they're pulling off this sort of legal but absolutely awful scam. California's government uses something called intergovernmental transfers. Essentially, the state shifts money around, exploits Medicaid's reimbursement system, and ends up pocketing federal funds that were never meant to go there. It's the classic shell game. Move the money, distract the audience, and before you know it, California has turned an ambulance budget into a pension bailout. And this isn't even just a one-time thing. California has perfected this scam, and other states are taking notes. In fact, Illinois is already advertising the same loophole to its local governments. If this keeps spreading, Medicaid will go from a healthcare program to a slush fund for broke state governments. So back in 2022, the California Department of Healthcare Services was like, hey, what if we just jacked up the reimbursement rate for emergency medical transport by $800 per trip? And the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, also known as the people who should be paying attention but really are not, just said, yeah, sure, that sounds reasonable. Where do I sign? Now, if you're thinking, okay, but isn't that money going to saving people in ambulances? No, it's not. Because instead of funding better emergency services, California figured out that they could just give EMS contracts to their own fire departments, subcontract out the actual ambulance work to private companies, and pocket the difference. And where does that extra cash go? Pension funds. Because apparently, what really needs emergency care in California is their retirement system, let alone the fact that in Sonoma County, the fire services budget nearly doubled thanks to this scheme. Meanwhile, this completely screws over private ambulance companies who for years have been the most cost-effective and the fastest option for emergency care. But because they can't get government's extra cash bonus, they can't compete. So they're just being pushed out. California is like that one friend who keeps borrowing money from you, never has the cash to pay you back, but somehow manages to keep posting those Instagram photos from a yacht. And this is a problem for everyone, because guess who's actually paying for this mess? We are, American taxpayers. California is robbing the federal Medicaid piggy bank, and we're just picking up the tab. And if other states catch on, it'll get even worse. And Medicaid will turn into a giant piggy bank for every state government with a spending problem, which means less money for actual healthcare and more money for whatever nonsense politicians come up with next. So what can be done? Well, this is where the federal government, specifically CMS, which is now run by Dr. Oz, they need to start cracking down on this nonsense. It's one thing for states to be independent when they're doing it with their own money, but if someone in Texas is paying for something in California, then they have a right to know how their money is being spent. California is the fiscally irresponsible roommate America never wanted. It's time we stop Venmoing them rent money that keeps being spent on vodka and Botox.